Katelyn, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brittany, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This is a special bonus episode, so very excited about that. We haven't had a bonus episode in a little bit, but that is because we have our upcoming hiring forum, our jobs fair, a first ever one I've ever heard of in FemTech. Have you ever heard of a FemTech jobs fair?
I have not, and I'm psyched to be part of it.
Yes, this is so awesome. So listeners, today's our special bonus episode. We're going to interview Katelyn and we're going to talk about the current state of the jobs market and talk a little bit about working in FemTech, the skills you need, etc. But if you want to learn more, the deep dive really is at the event. We're going to kick off with an awesome keynote where we're going to dive even further into these topics. So consider this a little preview. Katelyn, let's kick it off with learning more about you and your background. Even though, you work in, job searching, executive search, not necessarily FemTech, we still want to learn about who you are. So tell us a little about where you're from, what you study, and how'd you end up in the position you are now?
Of course. Yeah, happy to. So I have been with the Bowdoin group for about 12 years now, coming up on my 12th anniversary, which is crazy, but I'm a born and raised Massachusetts native. I grew up in a little town called Hudson, Massachusetts, which is not Western Mass, despite others' opinions. But so grew up in Hudson. I went to Boston College. I majored in economics and sociology and sort of came out not totally knowing what I wanted to do, but sort of landed in more the financial services world, actually, within wealth management and sales and all of that. And did that for about 5 or 6 years. Met my current husband at that company, and we decided it was time to do something different. So I sort of fell into recruiting, which was a interesting way to leverage my skills on the relationship management and building side, and just found it really interesting. Obviously, I really like connecting with people and getting to know others and hearing their stories and all of that. So I ended up at the Bowdoin group, where, obviously, like I said, I've been here for about 12 years, and we have evolved quite a bit over the past 12 years, and I'm happy to, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, dive a bit deeper into that. But it's been great. I think I always had an interest in healthcare, going into college and sort of coming out of college, and it's sort of a fortuitous way to end up in healthcare, in a lot of different aspects of it. So it's been great.
Usually one wouldn't think, oh, I have a passion for healthcare and you're in a recruiting firm, right?
Exactly.
So why don't we tell us about that? What is the Bowdoin group? What do they do?
So we're an executive search firm. We're about 60 people now at the company. So I kind of can no longer say that we're a boutique search firm, but we're still relatively small, headquartered out of the Boston area. Been around for about over 25 years at this point, founded by our CEO and founder within the life sciences and pharma space. So our roots have always been sort of within healthcare and life sciences. We have evolved quite a bit. Like I said, we are a executive search firm. We do anything from, I would say, C-level roles, C-level searches. So anything CFO, COO, COO, et cetera. And if you think of like sort of CEO -2 potentially. So any roles that are, not technically executive level, but, down through SVP or VP, really anything that's critical and paramount to growing the business. We really, our bread and butter really is working with, startups and high growth companies, right? So I would say anywhere from seed round through series C or D round companies on the venture back side, some private equity backed companies. There are obviously exceptions to that rule where we do work with some larger players, but our clients really come to us, when they're in high growth mode. They either just received a round of funding and they need to build out an executive team or hire a team underneath to grow really fast and support that level of growth internally. So I would say about 80 to 90% of what we do now is across healthcare in some way, shape, or form. So whether that's life sciences or what we consider digital healthcare tech, which has actually been the fastest growing part of our business in the past, upwards of 5-6 years. So I think that's sort of one of the reasons that clients really like working with us is our ability to be subject matter experts in our respective verticals, particularly within healthcare.
Yeah. Have you seen changes in the jobs market in healthcare over time? Like, has it just over across the board, there's more jobs in health tech, or, is it specifically y'all's skill set that allows you to see more and more health tech, or how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's been, like I said, the fastest growing part of our focus, which I think is telling to what types of companies are hiring. There's a ton of money flowing into the space on the venture and private equity side. Obviously, this movement toward virtual care and tech-enabled services, and COVID obviously had a huge part to play in that. And I don't, that doesn't seem to be going away. But I think, I think it's been a huge move toward digital, toward leveraging, technologies that are, whether it's artificial intelligence or robots, right? Or things that are really going to change the ecosystem and the narrative entirely around how care is delivered, whether that's specific to women's health or not. So I think the demand from that perspective has been huge, especially over the past 12 to 24 months.
That's a great point, because when I meet with, students or individuals changing industries, and they say, what skills do I need for FemTech? I say, one, a passion for women's health, and two, just as long as you're tech enabled, like when I say, oh, we use Slack, Monday.com, and, Zoom and this and that, I want you to be like, oh, I know half of those. And the other half, I'm not familiar, but I'm sure I can look around and get up to date quickly, right? Like, you need to be a tech enabled person now, I feel like, in healthcare.
1000%. I think it's that's what makes it interesting, right? It's the innovation that's coming out of this, and the ideas, that are fueling the whole ecosystem. And to your point, it is the passion for the mission, right? I think there was a statistic I read that was it said 75% of people that changed jobs in 2021 did it to be tied closer to the mission of their company. So I think that's a huge factor here.
Yeah,
sure.
I think a lot of candidates at our jobs fair are going to be people who are, maybe they were happy, they were content, they were okay at their job, but they didn't feel like they were waking up and changing the world. And FemTech is an industry where I know, at least for myself, for 2 years now, I've woken up and been like, I'm changing the world in some capacity here, and I love that. I really love that. It fills my cup. I want to talk, let's go back to more of a 30,000 foot view. And then we'll kind of narrow down back into the FemTech jobs market. But what are you seeing right now in terms of trends in the US for the jobs market in general? I've heard this thing called the Great Resignation. I'm hearing all these crazy statistics. Like you just said, 75% of people that changed it was because they want to be more passionate about their work. So what the heck is happening right now in the US with the jobs market?
Yeah, it's been sort of unprecedented. I think we can all agree. I mean, you can read millions of articles on the Great Resignation, right? 2021. And, now they're calling the Great Rebound of 2022, I think. So, I think
new terms.
The dynamic will change. Yes, exactly. But I think, COVID had a huge impact on that. And I think it made, people sort of look themselves in the mirror, or sort of rank, in order of importance, how they were viewing themselves, at their job, at home, et cetera. And obviously, women were hugely impacted, by the whole, move to remote, if you have school age kids and having to deal with remote learning and childcare and daycares closing and stuff like that. So, I think it did sort of uproot a lot of dynamics at home for people, which certainly affected the job market. I think on the flip side of that, you have, this whole remote working, policy and idea now, where, rewind, 3-4 years ago, when we had searches or, looking for CEOs or CFOs, they needed to be able to get to the office every day, right? So that significantly limits the geography that you can search for your candidate in, and the overall pool of talent. Now it's just not the case. And companies know that they're not going to be able to really limit geography from a competitive perspective, because it's, people want the flexibility. They want to be able to work from home. We've all figured out that the world still works via Zoom, right? Although it can be torturous at times, but I think that's
sometimes even better. right, on
Right.
Zoom. Because I'm thinking back to when I had a startup and, I had $1 million in investing, felt like I had all the money in the world. Little did I know, naive little founder Brit, but I was paying WeWork for 2 offices. And I think back and I'm like, why were we paying that? Like, we could have all worked from home, but it was like this idea that like, oh, when we need an office and we work, so we could all see each other every day and pay for parking. And it's like, what? Why were we doing that? Was that little toggle that says remote on like Indeed, or I'm seeing now on, as we're setting up this job fair, all of these applications, and there's always a toggle that says like remote work. Is that a new toggle, or is that has that always been there?
I think that's been there I think it's been there.
And
I'm
now it's
actually,
like prominent.
yeah,
Like,
I'm surprised it actually still exists, because I would imagine that 90% of the job
it's
postings are
automatic.
at this point.
Yeah.
Obviously there's certain functions and industries where that's just not an option, right? But I think for this space in particular, and sort of the tech world, it can work really well.
Have you seen an influx in like female clients or a desire for more females to fill healthcare positions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the focus around, DE&I and diversity, equity, and inclusion is been paramount over the past couple of years across the board. I think what's refreshing is the number of female CEOs that either we're working with now, or in recruiting for CEOs, talking with women that are really driven by by being at the tip of the spear of growth for a company at the C level. So I think that's been really refreshing. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still a world dominated by men largely at the top. So I think it's always forefront with clients to have at least a diverse slate of candidates. Obviously they're going to pick the right person for the job at the end of the day, but I think it's really important that companies focus on the diversity aspect as they're thinking about hiring.
One interesting thing about women's health that we see is sometimes women's health companies are founded by men because they are bioengineers, or they have this patent, or they're working in this lab. I don't know. But they get to a point where they say, all right, we need a woman to lead this now, because males leading women's health companies, it's just sometimes there's just juxtaposition. It just doesn't seem right, feel right, do whatever. You need at least a woman that's right there with you, a co-founder, a CTO, a COO, that's the female, right? And so do you see any other industries where having a woman at the helm is just right? Like it's supposed to be there, leading a women's health company? Or is this like a women's health like industry, like not weird, but like it's a trend that is specific for this industry versus others?
No, I mean, it's obviously more prominent, I think, in women's health, where, there's an obvious connection to the mission and the problem that they're trying to solve for, right? Like, I can't name client names, but there's, a company we're working with now that's a, virtual care lactation consulting company, right? And they're, going to be looking for a CEO. And, the reality is, can a man really connect to that problem that they're trying to solve for? And are they going to be out there fundraising and pouring their, heart out to do so? So I think that there's certainly a question mark around that. But, I think within the digital health space more broadly, there's always an interest in a female-led, a female CEO or a female executive. And a lot of times it does connect back to the mission in that sense too, right? It doesn't have to be FemTech or women's health. It can be oncology, right? If someone has had a really bad experience with, a parent or loved one that, passed away from cancer, and they were with them that entire journey. And is there, an opportunity for someone to become a CEO of a company that's trying to solve for, how we deliver care to oncology patients, right? So I think it does tie back to the mission across the board in digital health, and that there is a focus on diversity for sure.
Do you remember the first time you heard the word femtech, or learned about what it was?
Yeah, it's going to be in the past couple of years. I mean, thanks to your social media, I think that certainly helped. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it's certainly new. It's an area that's untapped and exciting. And given sort of where we are as an organization at the Bowdoin Group and our, expertise in digital health and how we've sort of built that up, this is a no-brainer for us to really focus on moving forward and figure out how we can make an impact in FemTech.
Have you heard of any other executive search firms kind of carving out a objective to make sure you're part of FemTech?
Not that I can think of in terms of,
Me neither. So,
competitive
yeah.
landscape. So that's, I suppose, a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see some larger organizations waking up and being the first movers in that space. With them has been an amazing sponsor for us, and they're an accounting firm, right? And they have a FemTech dedicated team. Goodwin Law, they just started a women's health specific law department, right? And then now we have the Bowdoin Group being like, hey, we're putting the flag up. We see that this is a new industry about to just explode. In fact, we're in the early stages of that, and we want to be there at the forefront. So I love that companies going out there saying, this is new, this is innovative. And by the way, we're a cutting edge firm, even if we're big, right? So I love that. What excites you the most about FemTech? And I would love your kind of personal Katelyn opinion, but also, your managing director hat at Bowdoin Group in terms of what is the potential here? What is FemTech mean to you as a business?
Sure. I think my personal hat is, I'm a mom of 3 boys, and who are very active and busy and just boys in general. Right. And I've had, I've worked my entire career. I'm a worker bee. It's what I've always wanted to do. And I think I would say I would be a terrible stay-at-home mom, but I envy the ones that can do it, and do both, quite frankly. So I think it's having to balance, being a working mom and the challenges that sort of you go through day in, day out, and having babies and sort of all of the the things that go along with that whole process. I think is when I started to hear about FemTech and women's health, it's an obvious focus that we should be putting at the front of our mind. So it's just, again, I have an interest in healthcare and in general, coming out of school. So it's been interesting just to get to know the space. I think it's from a Bowdoin Group perspective. I'm the only female managing director at the Bowdoin Group, so I think it's an obvious path for us to explore and sort of jump in with both feet in terms of building out a FemTech women's health focus. I think knowing and seeing the potential on the venture capital side and the private equity side, and being in the Boston area with a lot of these venture and PE firms in our backyard that are explicitly digital health or healthcare tech, there's a huge unaddressed gap in their sort of portfolios that will eventually be filled. And I think it's knowing and seeing some of the investments coming from those types of companies into the broader digital health space, makes me really excited for what what could be coming on the FemTech and women's health side. So I think it's it's a super exciting time just in general. I think your post at one point, right, this is like a $1 trillion market by 2030 or something. So it's crazy money.
Yeah. It's totally untapped. And I always like to joke that all you have to do is be willing to say the word vagina. And the many, many doors of market opportunity could open up for you. We kind of briefly talked about the skills one would need to work in FemTech, because I so often meet with people that said I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I didn't major in gender studies. Could I work in women's health? And I'm like, yes, because you're a software developer, or yes, you're a marketing director, or there's all these other skills that you can bring to the FemTech industry. And so just for you as, someone who's worked long and hard and looking at skill sets and hard skills, soft skills, what would you tell some of the candidates that are listening to this episode that are wondering if they're qualified for FemTech? What are they how would they be qualified? What would you be looking for?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You can't major in FemTech, right? You can't major in women's health, really. And it is a tie to the mission. It's if you bring that passion and excitement and you want to be part of a lot of these companies are going to be early stage, high growth, right? Which brings a different type of environment to the workplace, right? It's a roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty. I'm going to wear lots of different hats to help get this idea off the ground, right? I think to that point, take that a step further, for people that are, farther down the path in their careers, where a lot of these companies, on the women's health side are, founder led, right? They the founder is the CEO, and they can, get the company to a certain point, where, it's working and there's an idea and it's on people's radars, but they at some point need the leadership in the door, right? To help take the company to the next level and go out and fundraise and be a pure operator and build an infrastructure. So, if, on the leadership side to come in as a, COO, CEO of a, women's health company that's pre-Series A and help them get to that next level. I mean, that's what it's going to take, right? Because a lot of these founders are clinicians and they've never run a business before. So I think there's a huge opportunity there too.
That's right. And some of us are just founders in our bones and we like to build. So I know for myself, I like things that are like, oh, we have an idea. Let's get creative and think about the potential. Once things get regular and standard and well-oiled machines, I'm like, I'm bored, right? And so I'm sure there's lots of founders out there that have brought their company to pre-Series A and they're ready to be like, cool, I want to keep working on the really hard problems, but we need somebody more stable to be the face of it, the CEO running it, right?
Yeah. And you see that all the time, right? They'll step into more of a, head of clinical role or something, right? To be the subject matter expert, and it's still their baby and they're going to watch it, be super successful, but they're not good at the operating stuff. And that's totally fine. They shouldn't be. They haven't done it before. So
yeah. Well, Katelyn, this has been such a fun little preview interview of what our full-on keynote interview is going to be like. I'm very excited for that. I do still want to ask you the last two questions that we ask all of our guests and our listeners really love. And the first one is, if somebody wanted to start a FemTech company, what's an area in women's health that you think still needs innovating?
Yeah, again, I think if we go back to the idea of tech-enabled services, right? And I think there are some really great services companies out there that are getting off the ground in women's health, to provide that virtual care support, right? Whether it's around, new moms or, pregnant moms or, people trying to have, babies, what have you, really building a tech platform around that, right? And to support that and making, focusing on the engagement piece with the patient and with the, with the consumer. I think there's a lot of great ideas and a lot of good services components that could be, powerhouses if they get the technology right.
Transforming things into virtual healthcare. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And then what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
Again, I think it's the leadership. I think it's the leadership piece. I think there's tons of great ideas, tons of great visions, and passions behind those missions. And it's, how do you take it to the next level? How do you go out and capitalize on some of the funds out there and really grow these businesses to where they're making huge impacts on people's lives.
I love that idea, this thought of we need the powerhouses from other industries to come into femtech, right? People, maybe their names we already know, maybe even famous, powerhouse names from maybe fashion or TV or journalism or, pharmaceuticals, I don't know. And then they come to femtech and they bring their prestige or their, track record with them to elevate femtech. I've actually, you are maybe our 160th interview, and no one's ever said that. So awesome. Love it. I love when there's a new answer. Katelyn, this has been so much fun. I so appreciate your time. Again, listeners, this is just a little preview as to what our full-on jobs fair is going to be, which is March 23rd from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern. Katelyn, what are you the most excited about for our hiring forum coming up?
Well, it's the first one, so I think we set our expectations low, but I think the results are gonna blow us away, quite frankly, based on interest level so far. And I know us at the Bowdoin Group, we're all super excited, so we're looking forward to it.
Yep, we did our soft launch 7 days ago of promoting it. We already have over 200 candidates signed up, so it is.
Amazing.
I had a spidey sense, y'all, that this was going to be good. And sure enough, so I'm excited. Katelyn, we will chat soon, and everyone can come meet Katelyn at our March 23rd Jobs Fair. Thanks, Katelyn.
Thanks, Brittany, so much. Take care.